Hello, I am Asad Mehsood and I belong to South Waziristan. I am the student of History Department at GCU. At GCU, research is a mandatory part for awarding the degree of BA Honours. In this regard, I am here to discuss my thesis. So basically, as we know, the primary task of historian is to engage the primary sources. In my research, COVID-19 was a major hurdle and it made my topic to change at various stages. So the present topic which I fulfilled and tomorrow is my viva is titled as Collecting Pashtu Proverbs in the Colonial and Post-colonial South Asia. Basically, my thesis tries to understand the importance of proverbs for the colonial administration in the colonial times and for the Pashtun themselves in the post-colonial time period. It also tries to understand how proverbs constituted an important element in the colonial knowledge production. Basically, my thesis has three main arguments. The first argument is that Pashtun society was largely regarded as oral society and hence it has to be understood through proverbs and not through the textual evidences. This need compelled the colonial administrators and ethnographers to collect and compile the Pashto proverbs. The second argument which I made in my thesis is that proverbs are perceived as a cultural asset, as an identity maker and a source of pride for the Pashtun themselves. Hence, the collection of these proverbs continued in the post-colonial time period. It also has certain themes of continuity and departure from the colonial legacies which I tries to look into. And the third argument which I made in my thesis is, are proverbs relevant today? What is the future of proverbs and how can we best preserve these proverbs? So when we look into the proverbial scholarship, we come across two fields. One is perimyography and the other is perimyology. Basically, perimyography deals with the study of collection of proverbs, how proverbs have been collected and compiled, while perimyology deals with the study of proverbs, the performances of proverbs actually do. So by reviewing the literature, I came to the conclusion that some work has been done on the study of proverbs, that is perimyology, while perimyography, that is the collection of proverbs, is missing. My thesis tries to fill this gap. So as argued by Michel Foucault, colonialism created its own archaeology of knowledge. This knowledge about the colonies and the native peoples were later on used for both political and ideological purposes. This gathering of folklore and specifically proverbs was a part of this colonial knowledge gathering project. It was largely regarded by the colonial administrators and ethnographers and scholars that proverbs reflect the collective consciousness of a society. We cannot understand society through their religious scripts. These folklores and specifically proverbs give us insight into the otherwise unfamiliar land. And this was specifically true about the Pashtun society, which was regarded by the British as oral society, though I later on argue in my thesis that this is not historically true, but was constructed by the colonizers. So the British started collecting Pashto proverbs and compiling them in order to best understand the Pashtun society. The colonial ethnographers and administrators, for example, S.S. Thorburn and H.H. Risley and Colonel C.A. Boyle, collected and compiled various proverbs books. This collection of proverbs also continued in the post-colonial Pakistan. It had many reasons, but The primary reason was that the intrusion of other languages, specifically Urdu and English, were perceived as a threat against the Pashto. And these proverbs, since they are regarded as a cultural asset, as a source of pride, the Pashtun intellectuals and the nationalists specifically thought that these trends of using proverbs and the knowledge of proverbs is vanishing. Hence, they started collecting these proverbs. In this project, the Pashto Academy largely contributed, Pashto Academy Peshawar, but also independent scholars and amateur writers who are largely nationalists. They started compiling these, collecting proverbs and then compiling it to preserve it for the future. And in my thesis, I later on dwell on whether there are themes of continuity and departure from the colonial legacies. And in the last part, I discuss the contemporary relevance of proverbs. Are they relevant today? Are they some relics of the past? And is it necessarily to preserve the proverbs? And if necessary, how best can we preserve these proverbs? The market is flooded with the Pashto proverbs collections, but except for the few, majority of these collections are by amateurs, and somehow they lack the academic rigor. But it is largely agreed by majority of the scholars that it is the need of the day to preserve, to collect and preserve these proverbs, because they are vanishing due to the modernity, due to the intrusion of other languages, due to the migration of the people from the rural to the urban areas, mainly due to military operations. So it is needed to preserve these proverbs. And in the last, I would say that though my research certainly has limitations, but it would be best for the future researchers if they look into the earlier manuscripts and textbooks to look into the proverbs, whether they are frozen in time and space or they change with time.